Everyone, and thank you for joining us today for Seeking Facility Department Efficiency, the Elusive Goal, presented by Brent Ward and brought to you by IFMA's Corporate Facilities Council. Please be aware that this webinar is being recorded and you are muted to prevent background noise during the presentation. If you have any questions during the webinar, please type them in the questions box, and if time permits, Brent will answer your questions at the end of the presentation. We will also be sharing some housekeeping items at the very end of the webinar, so please make sure you stay on to see those credits roll. I now turn you over to Wayne Weitzel, Second Vice Chair of the IFMA Global Board and Senior Vice President at Solid Surface Care.
Thank you, Kylie. Well, folks, I'm back. I used to be the programs chair for the Corporate Facilities Council dating back 2016. And since then, Dexter Barrow has been running programs and doing a phenomenal job. And just a real quick shout out to our friend and yours, Dexter, for doing a wonderful job of bringing such great content here to our members. So thank you, Dexter. And thank you to the rest of the leadership at the CFC. A few words here about our council, if you don't know, and if we could go to the next slide, Kylie. I think that's the one that. Yeah, there it is right there. Council of the Year and Emerging Professional of the Year. So last year, the Corporate Facilities Council, after undergoing a couple of years of rebranding and refocusing, we won Council of the Year. Very happy about that, and would love for any of you that are here listening, if you are not members of the council, to consider joining. There's a lot of great content like this that we send out, and a lot of benefits. One of them is that we offer CFM exam prep classes at no cost to our members. So a lot of things like that. Really good reason to join for only the $55 it costs to join our council. So please consider that if you haven't already. And of course, things like that exam prep class and all the other things we do would not be possible were it not for our sponsors. And our CFC sponsors here are listed. eStructura not only is our platinum sponsor, one of our platinum sponsors, but also sponsors our LATAM efforts as well, which are headed up by Jose Diaz. And then we have First On Site, Tersano, and Empire Office as our other sponsors. So we encourage you, if you're procuring any of these types of services, to please engage our sponsors and reach out to them. They're not only great because they're taking care of us as a council and offering funds to support us, but they're also just fantastic vendors. We've gotten to know each of them very well. So encourage you to do that. Now, speaking of great people, we have today as our speaker, we have Brent Ward, and I'm sure a lot of you know Brent, have run across either his name or at an IFMA council or an IFMA community or an IFMA conference, any of the C's. Basically, you'll find Brent there. I had the good fortune of running a knowledge roundtable with Brent at IFMA Fusion recently, and it was he and I running the roundtable, and it was like hurting some cats there, but Brent kept us cool and kept me cool. We had a lot of great questions, and then I was just thankful Brent was there to use his vast knowledge. That's one thing I'll say about Brent here before I read his bio, is that Brent is not just a specialist in one thing. He has a wide array of knowledge and capabilities, which again, isn't that the FM story, right? The decathletes of the business world. But let's say a little bit about Brent here. So Brent has worked in facility management since 2007, primarily in the education sector, with additional experience in banking and medical laboratories. In 2023, he founded his own consulting firm. He is actively involved with IFMA and serving as the immediate past president of the Oregon Southwest Washington chapter, holding prior roles as treasurer, vice president, and president. He also serves as treasurer of IFMA's Facility Management Consulting Council, sits on the America Advisory Board of IFMA's Global Board, and is a board member of the IFMA Foundation. Gee, Brent, your arm must be sore from getting voluntold into all of these things. Brent is an experienced public speaker and writer, contributing to business and industry publications, as well as IFMA's FMJ magazine. His work is also featured on his website, and he holds the FMP, SFP, and CFM credentials, and is a certified facilitator of training, which means he can teach the IFMA credentials, by the way. He is passionate about sustainability, focusing on strategies that reduce energy use and improve efficiency while helping organizations increase profitability. And I'm trying to take a page out of Dexter's playbook here and share a fun fact about Brent. And Brent's fun fact is every job I have had, even before FM, I was always finding ways to be faster and better. I made jigs for cutting mass quantities of things. When I had my painting business, after lunch, I took something back to my van I was done with if I had to go get something. That made the end of the day quicker. Always looking at efficiency. Excellent, Brent. Very, very good. That's, you see the way your mind works there. But basically, Brent, as I've gotten to know you, you're somebody that's very well respected in IFMA, not just because of his knowledge, but probably more so because of your desire to be helpful, assist, jump in wherever it's necessary, stand in the gap, take some bullets, lead. And I think a lot of people have had that same experience with you. So not only are we thanking you for being our presenter today, but also for all you do for our organization. And with that, I'd like to turn it over to our speaker, Brent Ward.
Well, thank you, Wayne. Hope I can live up to all of that today. Efficiency is something that we all are striving to achieve, and I say it's an elusive goal because no matter how efficient we are, we can always find ways to be more efficient. So the question is, how far do we want to go? How far do we want to take it? What do we want to do within our organization? And that depends on you, your organization, what its strategic plan is, the size of the organization. All of those things factor into how efficient that you're going to be and become as an organization, but specifically as a facilities department. So we're going to look at how we can do that with our personnel, with service level agreements, and with our software. So we're going to take away a few things, as you can see here today, that will help you to look at your organization and determine what can I do to make my department more efficient. Um, and just remember, as I'm sure you're aware, the hardest thing to get past is we've always done it that way, or it's not broke, don't fix it. But everything is broke, really, because there's always ways to improve and do better. So we need to look at those ways, and hopefully today a few things that we talk about are things that maybe some of you hadn't thought about and can look at within your organization. So let's look at personnel. Work order delivery. Pray tell, we're already doing all of our work order delivery electronically, that we've eliminated paper. Paper's slow, paper gets lost, and all of those things lead to inefficiencies. So hopefully we're delivering them that way, and hopefully there are, for specific things, if you have specific trades, plumbing, electrical, HVAC, carpentry, whatever it might be, your CMMS, IWMS, whatever you've got, you can put in there that if it is an electrical item, that it goes to an electrician. If it's plumbing, it goes directly to a plumber. And so that way you are speeding the system up. As soon as the work order comes through and gets approved, bang, it goes out to that individual and they can put it in their workflow. Maybe they're already going to be at that building today and they can get it done right away. So, that is speeds things up. Trade specific versus generalists. Again, what do we have within our organization? How big is it? What can we do? If we have trade specific people, obviously they're going to know shortcuts and work faster on their specific trade than a generalist will. But we also need some generalists to handle smaller things, things that aren't necessarily trade specific. So we have to look at that balance and where are we? And a good place to start is pulling a report as to how many hours per year in the last, say, 5 years that you have spent on plumbing, on electrical, on HVAC, and determine, would I be better off to have a specific plumber or an electrician so that they could handle these things? Because right now I'm spending X number of dollars on a service level agreement. Their response time isn't as fast as I need it to be. And if I had a person on staff that did that, would it be saving me money? Would the response time be better? So that is a reason for doing so. So those things are things that we can analyze internally and determine where we need to be with our manpower. And excuse me, data availability. Do we have everything in our software so that in the field, the trades can pull it up on their device and look at the warranties and see if it's under warranty? They can look at the manual and they can look at a parts explosion to see what the parts are on it. If all of that information is not in your system so that they can pull it electronically and they've got to walk back to the office and go through paper and try to find all of that, I don't have to tell you how inefficient that is. So are we taking full advantage of our software? We'll get more into that a little bit later on. And detailed procedures. How detailed are our work orders? If it just says service AHU 12, what does that mean? What do they do? What tools, specialty tools, might they need to take with them? Are there parts that need to go with them, such as filters or a specific oil or a specific lubricant or things of that nature, so that they can collect all of those things and take them with them? So they don't have to go out there and go, oh yeah, I need this. Oh yeah, I need that, and come back to the shop and get those things. That is just a waste of time and totally inefficient. So let's look at a typical work order as I like to see them in the system. So we've got what it is we're working on. We've also got wrench time. So now if that wrench time is in your software, you can pull a report and see how many man hours of backlog that you have in a specific trade. You can plan um, the days out, so they know how long it's going to take on a specific unit and how many they can get done in a day. Specialty tools, there they are listed there. Consumable items that they need to take with them. What measurements that they need to record so that you can put them in the system so that you have tracking and history, so that when things go bad, you can look at that history and determine, is this a repeating problem that we need to fix? Is this a one-off? What's going on? All of those things make you and your team more efficient. And that's what we're looking for. So not only do we have that information, but then we have step by step, every step necessary to service that unit. Why? Well, because everybody has their way of doing things. And these are considered industry best practices. So if we do it this way, we're going to save the life of our equipment. It'll last longer. We won't have to replace it as quickly. And there will be less downtime from things that we didn't check on and didn't fix when we were doing the PM on the unit. So these are things that we need to make sure are in our software for efficiency of our team, for them to be able to get through things, get it done, and not have to go back because they didn't check something or didn't put a gauge on something and know that that would have told them that there's a problem that they've got to dig deeper into. So if we can get all of these things combined and done and in our software and available to our technicians on their device when they're at the machine or before they go to the machine so they can take everything with them they need, then the efficiencies are tremendously improved in our department. There's been, there was one case that company that I was working with had two jobs out there that they were looking for technicians. And when we were done going through all of their efficiencies and changing things around, they realized they didn't need two more technicians. They had been totally inefficient. So think about the funding that saved the company and what put back into your department budget because of not needing the technicians simply by becoming more efficient. Service level agreements. Sometimes we get into service level agreements and we never look at them again. We just renew them every whatever we do. I always did 3-year agreements, but whatever your company does, 3 years, I feel, makes everything more efficient. You don't have to go through the process so frequently, which is more efficient. The company gets to know your equipment better, and so they're paying more attention. You get to understand them and work with them, which makes everything more efficient. So I like longer term SLAs instead of annual SLAs. And sometimes I would make it a 3-year with a potential for 2 single-year additions. And that made things more efficient as well. Again, detailed procedures. The work order that we just looked at is something that should be part of the RFQ, so they know what you expect and what you expect to be reported back to you, and so that you know that you are getting the best maintenance possible and not what is convenient for them or profitable for them necessarily. They can bid on exactly what you want, and again, that way your equipment is maintained better and will last longer. In your SLAs, do you have a dollar authorization that if they are working on one of your pieces of equipment, doing a PM on it, and it needs something, do they have authorization to do that work up to $250 or up to $500 or whatever the case might be, depending on the equipment and et cetera, that we might want to set? And why is that important? Well, because otherwise they're going to put it in their report that this needs to be replaced, and then they're going to go back to the shop. And then you're going to have to call them and set up another appointment for them to come back out and replace that piece. And they're going to charge you another trip charge. And you see where this is going. When they were right there and could have done it, probably was on their truck, and they could have done it right then and there on the spot and moved on. So consider those things when writing service level agreements. What reports do you want back from them? You know, you need to know if they put a voltmeter or ohm meter on it, wherever they were checking. You want to see those numbers? Yes. Do you have a checklist that you want them to fill out? Yes, you should. And then all that data can go into your software so that it's available for the technicians every time that they come out and look at that piece of equipment, where things were the last time that they were there. And the last thing we're going to look at is training versus SLAs. Sometimes we just out of habit bring a contractor in to do certain things. And we need to analyze, is that efficient? Is it cost effective? Or should we train someone in-house to do that instead of subcontracting it? And one of the things that I have found almost universally is most companies tend to subcontract pest management. But in most cases, because the training is so inexpensive and so is there's a minimum amount of equipment that's necessary, it's often cheaper to send someone to school and get trained to do so and to do it in-house than it is to have a contractor. And again, you can analyze that. What are you paying per year for pest management? And what would it cost you to train one of your people to be able to do that? So look at that. And that makes you more efficient as well, because when things come up, you've got someone on staff who can go and handle it right away. And you don't have to pay for an additional call from your pest control people and wait on them to come out and do it. So the efficiencies are greatly increased by doing that. What about our software? Is the software that you're using right for your circumstances, for your company? Meaning, the bigger the company, the more details that you're going to need, the more that you're going to need out of your software. So you have to analyze that. Just because the software that you have and you've been using it for 15 years doesn't mean that it's right for you today and what's going on today with the necessary reporting in many cases for ESG and carbon and things of that nature. A lot of that data can come out of your CMMS or IWMS if you're using it correctly and it's fully loaded and working properly. So if you need that information, does your software provide it for you? Then you don't have to go and manually pull data and try to get those reports filled out. You can just ask for a report out of your software. Again, efficiency. Um, Again, we talked about this earlier. Have you put in all the data into your software that needs to be there? Do your technicians have access to everything that they need when they're out in the field working on a piece of equipment? If not, then there's huge inefficiencies there. Um, Work order delivery, we talked about that earlier, and having that automated so that we speed that up and make it more efficient. What about automating your responses and updates? So obviously we're not talking about PMs here, but we're talking about work orders that staff have put in. When a technician goes out and realizes that it's not a bulb in that fixture, it's a ballast, and they've got to order a ballast, do they put that in the software, and is it automated that it goes back to the person who put that work order in and says, hey, we've checked this out, there is a ballast missing, we've ordered it, it'll be here on Tuesday, and we'll get that replaced as soon as that part comes in, so that they're aware. And sometimes we say, well, how does that make us more efficient? Well, in a couple of ways. One, we don't get phone calls from them going, why haven't you fixed this yet? Because they're aware. So we didn't have to field those, which is inefficient. But also, we need to remember that we are also in the customer service business. And if we are informing them of what's going on, they become trusting of us as a department, and they don't drive us crazy and bug us about things because they know that we're working on things and we will get them done. And that makes us more efficient. If we're doing customer service surveys, then things like that will help with those survey responses. So the big thing is in trying to find efficiency within our department is looking. We have to look. We can't say we've always done it this way, or it's working just fine, or it's good enough. Because in today's world, if we're not becoming more efficient, if we're not using things effectively, then we're falling behind, and we're costing ourselves and our organization money. So we need to look at all of those things, at personnel. We need to look at our SLAs. We need to look at our software. We need to look at all of these things so that we are doing everything with intent, that we know what we're accomplishing, what we want to accomplish, where we want to go, so that we can be as efficient as possible as departments, as organizations, and that makes the C-suite happy, and that's never a bad thing. So that concludes my piece on efficiency. There's my contact information if anyone wants to contact me about anything, but we can field questions now.
Okay, Brent. So I want to say first, before we get into any questions, there's a lot of parallels between the things that you went through and Alfred's Deming. Deming was the guy who went into post-war Japan and really helped get the country back on its feet and developed his system. And so many of the things you said really dovetail with that. I would encourage people to pick that up because it's really building quality into the system. And as opposed to doing audits on the back end, what do you do on the front end to ensure success? And so much of what you said really resonates with that. Even one of his major tenets that I've always taken to heart is remove barriers to pride of workmanship. meaning that everybody has to have the right tools to do their jobs and at a core level. So I really appreciated what you said there. So what with teams that are just so tactically buried with things right now and trying to get things done, what can they do? What's a step they could take tomorrow to say, look, we've got to get out of this box and start being more strategic about what we're putting on our work orders, how we're approaching this? What's a concrete next step that the team could take to move toward that goal tomorrow?
Well, I've when I was a facility manager and not a consultant, one of the things that I would do is sit my team down and have a chat with them about, because you hear from them, you can feel it from them when they feel like they're overwhelmed, there's too much going on. They'll even tell you quite often when they feel like they're going in circles. So sit them down and go, okay, we are overwhelmed. We probably need more staff, maybe, but let's talk about where we feel we can improve our efficiency. What can we do? And hear it from them. Get your technicians involved in the conversation. They see it. They know what's going on. They will give you great input on that. And then, itemize those things, list them out, and then have another meeting and prioritize those things. What do we want to prioritize? What are they going to be? And then one by one, with their input, what what solutions do we have for this? What can we do to fix this problem? And you'll get buy-in from your team, and you'll find that efficiency improves. It's difficult because quite often you're so buried in day to day and getting things done that you don't want to take time out for those sort of things. But the results in the end always pay off. You always find ways to become more efficient.
I really like that. I like that concept, and also adding into that, maybe creating, I mean, and the term has maybe been overused, but I think I haven't come up with a better term for it. Maybe psychological safety is letting your team know, hey, it's okay to talk about these things, and no one's going to have their feelings hurt necessarily because we're trying to solve the problem. And maybe open up with something where, as the leader, where you maybe could have done a better job, or you misread a situation, or you didn't take someone's advice on the team and say, as an example, it's okay to be honest and talk about these things. But I love that. And I think it also comes from your consulting mindset as well, because you're often the outsider coming into these organizations and doing that very thing and asking these questions. And for some of these people, I would bet the farm that it might be the first time that anyone has ever sat them down and said,
Yeah,
tell me what you see. Right.
yeah,
So it's,
it's
again,
true.
something that the internal team could take a lesson from that and do. And to your point, if they have input and buy-in, they'll take responsibility for this thing. So really good answer. I like that. So we have a
Yeah.
couple of questions coming in here. One is someone said, okay, what kind of improvement have you seen when you've implemented these with one of your clients? So maybe what's the bad to good story maybe that you've witnessed or seen?
Well, I mentioned the one client that pulled pulled two job requests because they became so much more efficient. That company, we looked at somewhere around 35-37% increase in efficiency. They were bad. I mean, they were horrible. They were still doing paper. They had nothing in their software, so they weren't getting anything out of it. It was basically an expensive work order system. So once we got everything in it and the way it should be operating, then their efficiencies became tremendously better. Um, uh, I've seen I've seen where they've looked at and brought things in-house, many things in-house, because once we got them efficient, they realized that they had the manpower and time to do things in-house. And so they would end SLAs at the end of their contract and bring those things in-house. So it just depends on the company and where they're at on what kind of efficiencies that we see. But I look at it this way. Facilities never has enough budget. So if we can become more efficient, we're internally increasing our budget. And that's a good thing. Uh, we all would love to have more money to work with. So the more efficient we become, the better budget that we have to do things with.
There's another question here. I'm going to kind of reword this here a little bit. So if someone is trying to make a justification to their senior leadership for investments in improvements such as a better CMMS or even a CMMS and or the investment of headcount to be able to accurately put data into these systems, which is becoming easier and easier with AI and asset tagging and things like that these days. But the question is, how do I justify that financially? And I'm this reminds me of a meeting I had yesterday with Justin Hitt from Lincoln Properties Company, and he is outgoing chair of the Museum and Cultural Institutions Council. But he framed everything in terms of a look and feel, and went qualitative first to make a case for these improvements, because sometimes it's really difficult to distill a financial efficiency number by saying, let us do this and we'll save X amount of dollars, and more tying it to the strategy of the company and say, this is what the mission, vision, values are of this company. Therefore, if we're going to deliver on that, we need A, B, and C. So can you talk a little bit about how a team would go to senior leadership to advocate for investments? I think one of the things I heard is that if you do your efficiencies first and demonstrate success there, that might buy you a little credibility. But how do you see somebody capitalizing on that to get more investment in their FM department that will then either continue to reduce costs and or even generate productivity for staff?
Well, we all know that if we don't maintain things properly, we are shortening the life of that equipment, which means capital expenditures before we really need to make those capital expenditures. So that's kind of an area that I like to start in, is helping the C-suite to understand that by having the right software, we can have the detailed work orders in the system. And therefore, we're going to get the best preventative maintenance that we can to extend the life of these assets. And the IFMA's study shows 40 to 60% reduction in life of an asset by no to poor maintenance. So, when do they want to replace that $250,000 HVAC unit on the roof? In 12 years or 20 years? The obvious answer, everybody wants it 20, and maybe we can get 22 if we maintain it properly. So by having the right software that you can put all of this into, and like the one that I showed with man hours in it, so they can even then see reports of what they have in the backlog or in deferred maintenance, that has the parts and tools that are necessary. Then even though you can't put a specific number to it, you will be able to in 2 or 3 years after it's installed, because you'll be able to see your greater efficiencies by your staff being out there. But if we start with the capital expenditure piece, because that's big dollars to the C-suite, and help them to appreciate that we need to maintain these things better, and we need to know what's going on with this equipment, and we have no means of cataloging and filing this stuff. But yet, if we had software, it would all go in there and be at our fingertips. Is a
Right.
huge way to start.
Right. I'd imagine this is too another way where one could use their vendors to help them make the case for some of these things. Let them come up with the sophisticated arguments and so forth. Let's take your example of the rooftop unit. It's one thing to say, do you want to replace this in 12 or 20 years? It's another to show them a photo of the street shut down in front of the building with a crane out in front and all that's involved, and the danger, and he's got 4 floors of law firm in your building that
Yeah.
are going to be a little upset that you're shutting the building down for 3 days, or just, you're shutting the AC down for 3 days, and then you're saying, well, we can do it during this season, but it's going to cost you more if we do it during this season. Or do you wait until it breaks down and then then we have the chaos that ensues. So I think there's framing these things is really important. And again, getting back to you being a consultant, see, I have heard this so many times, and I've witnessed it, where you can say something to senior leadership, kind of where you're blue in the face saying, this is what we need to do. And then an outside consultant comes in and says it, and then it's oh, let's move forward with this
Mhm.
initiative. There's something about that outside voice sometimes, which I do think that's a problem for the FM community, is that we are so good at being problem solvers and getting things done, and not championing our successes and quantifying our successes, that oftentimes we don't have a familiar voice to leadership, or where we've banked goodwill to be able to do some of these things. But I think that's something that I know you uniquely are really good at as a consultant, is working with those teams and arming them with what they need data wise, and setting up a structure for them going forward.
Yeah.
So talk a little bit about how you engage clients with these particular types of services, and what that looks like.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. In fact, I have a mechanical company that calls me when they're having trouble with a client that just won't listen. Won't listen about the fact that if we don't do this repair now, the machine's going to go bad and you're going to be down. And it's so they'll call me and ask me to go in and assess this situation. And every single time, because a consultant said it, they now sign on and do what has to be done. They're assuming that the HVAC contractor, the mechanical contractor, is just trying to make money, just trying to sell them stuff. But a consultant comes in that has no stake in the game, and they buy into it. So I try to help the whoever I'm talking to. Usually it's the CFO at that point in time. Understand that maintaining it is critical and repairing these things is critical, and that having a proper capital project or capital replacement plan, a 30-year plan for when these things are going to happen is critical for their budgeting, so they know what they're going to be coming into in future years. But it's also critical in keeping their building going. If they're like you said, if they've got 4 floors of lawyers in the building, or if they're a manufacturing facility and they lose that piece of equipment because they didn't maintain it properly or didn't do whatever was necessary, um, they're going to be in a world of hurt, because you can't just go to Home Depot and buy a $250,000 RTU.
Put some
Those
swamp
things,
coolers in.
yeah, most of them are 18, a lot of those nowadays, right now, because of all of the clean buildings performance standards that are going on nationwide, they're 18 to 24 months out. So if you don't plan, you're toast. If that unit goes
Yeah.
down, you're toast.
I think this is really a strong, advocating strongly for facility condition assessments, and really
Hmm.
including them as part of your routine strategic planning and offering to senior leadership, and framing it to them in a way they understand, in terms of hot spots and heat maps, and saying this is really where we need to focus, and understanding too, hey, we know this building is going to close in 2 years, therefore we're going to keep it together with band-aids and duct tape for that 2 years. Why invest the money? But here's where we need to be focused. You're going to be putting all these people in this building, so therefore, and I think a lot of FCAs, when people have had them done, it almost reminds me of retro commissioning, where they get it done and then it sits on a shelf, or metaphorically, or sits in their computer, and they're not using it as a reference document, updating it. And I think the challenge is in FM, we have we keep things going by hook or by crook, and the senior leadership is like, well, you told me we needed to replace this in 5 years, Chicken Little, and it's still working. So, all, and if we frame that in terms of internal rate of return and everything, you could have wasted me money. As opposed to saying, well, it's going for 5 years because literally there's duct tape around the unit, and we're kind of
Yeah.
keeping this thing going, and we've told you about that. Um, but it's hard to quantify those things. I think this is where AI could be
Mhm.
really helpful. One of our uh, IFMA leaders in implementing AI in useful ways, especially for O&M, is the True Data Ops. Alex Alessandro, he's spoken at a bunch of IFMA chapters, but he was telling me about the way that they find using vibration sensors and other ways, predictive analysis as to when these things are going to go down and getting some of this data. And I think that's something that's extremely valuable to get that prediction window a little tighter as to when we need to do replacement, and actually
Yeah.
tying, instead of Chicken Little saying we need to replace this pump, it's 2 years past its useful life and or whatever. Now we have data saying, well, the vibration was measured here, and now here's what it is. If it goes past this point, we risk catastrophic failure, and our models are predicting that could happen within anywhere from 1 to 17 months. So I think AI is going to be a
Mhm.
big help for these FM departments to
Yeah.
start to take the qualitative and make it quantitative. So that's the
Yep.
last question here. And unless anybody wants to type anything more into the chat window here, we'll keep that open. Type it into the question box. I'm sorry, but
Yep.
what do you think about the use of AI right now, and
I,
marrying that with the things that you've just spoken about?
I I think it's going to be extremely valuable because of that fact that it can extrapolate the data from vibration, from viscosity of the oil, from whatever it might be. And another thing that a lot of people don't think about, just throwing it in here real quick, is putting um, load meters on power going to units, because that'll tell us a lot too. If suddenly it's using more power, um, there's a reason for that, and we need to investigate it. What's, is the motor not lubed correctly? Is there a bearing going bad? Something, so that it's working harder to do its thing. So I'm a big believer in putting electric usage meters on big pieces of equipment, because that, combined with the compressor readings and other readings from that piece of equipment, will give you the full picture on what's going on. And if you see that it's starting to continually rise in its power usage, and it's a 20-year-old RTU, then that helps you justify that we need to get this thing replaced. It's starting to go bad. It's laboring to do what we need it to do. But
And
without
and it's
that data, you
right, and
can't.
it's costing us $700 more a day to operate it now.
Yep, yep. So you will make back, the ROI is becoming quicker with every day
Right.
we waste because of the power that it's using. So,
Right.
yeah.
Well, that's great, Brent. I'm really happy we had you on today, and I'd like to turn it back to Kylie here for everyone. Please stay on. Kylie has something very important to ask all of you.
Hello, everybody. It's Kylie again. I have a few things to share and then a few things to ask. So I'll start with sharing. We have two webinars coming up soon for the CFC. I'm going to drop the link to the registration page for the first one. This first one is our monthly Spanish webinar. And the next week's Spanish webinar is going to be given by Julio Miranda from Estructura, which is one of our CFC sponsors. So we're excited to have him on. And even if you do not speak Spanish or read Spanish, I want to let you know that all of our Spanish webinars have a recording after that. If you register for, you'll be sent that recording, and you can watch the recording with the English transcript at the bottom. So you can still gain all of the knowledge from that webinar and follow along with that English or any other language through the transcript. So that's the first link I put in the chat. The second link I am going to put in, oh, actually, did I put that in the chat? Here, it's coming in the chat now, everyone. There you go. And here is the second link I'm going to put in the chat. It is to our next Wednesday webinar. And the title of that is The New Workplace Metrics, Making the Office an Experience Engine. So that is the second link that is coming to the chat now. And that webinar is going to take place on June 3rd. So please register for those webinars if you're interested. And now I have some questions to ask you. I want to know how today's webinar went. So there's going to be 4 questions total. Here is the first. On a scale of 1 to 5, how likely are you to recommend this content to another FM? Go ahead and put your answer in. Please answer completely honestly. This is to help the CFC with the content that we give out. So I'll keep that open for a few moments. Thank you so much for answering that question. Here is the next question. On a scale of 1 to 5, how well did the technology run during today's webinar? How well did the technology run? Was it easy to get on GoTo? Did it give you some trouble? Were you able to see and hear everything well? How well did that technology run? I'll leave this open for a few moments. And I appreciate you answering completely honestly. 2 more questions. Here's the next one. On a scale of 1 to 5, how much did you enjoy the content of today's webinar? So a little different than the first question. First one was, would you share this with another FM? But this one's all about you. How much did you enjoy today? Awesome. I'll leave this open for a few more moments. And I have one more question to ask you before we wrap up. Did you learn something new today that you can apply to your current role? That is the goal with these CFC Wednesday webinars, is we want to teach you something new every time you come. Okay, everyone, that was the last poll question. I want to give a few thank yous real quick. Thank you so much to Brent Ward for the time and effort you took to give this great presentation to our CFC members. I really appreciate it. Thank you to Wayne for stepping in at a moment's notice to come host this webinar. And I really appreciate you being a part of this, Wayne. Thank you to all of you who come and make these webinars happen. You come, you engage with us, ask questions, you email us after, and I really appreciate that. And finally, I want to say happy World FM Day. Whether you are a facility manager or you work in the facility management world, you provide services for facility managers, our built environment would not be the same without you. So thank you so much for everything you do. And that's the end of the webinar today. So thank you for coming, and I will see you next time. Bye, everyone.